weekly commentary based on culture and media. So be sure to subscribe and thumbs up if you're interested in this type of content. And let's talk about TikTok subcultures and aesthetics and what happened to subcultures. So, what is a TikTok aesthetic or a core, as you might know it? Think of things like cottagecore or e-girl or clean girl, mob wife, all these different aesthetics that you see pop up on TikTok and then they just kind of disappear after a while. And the difference between that versus what a subculture is, and when you think of subculture, you might think of like hippies or punk or post-punk or gothic. These were subcultures from, I guess it was like the 80s, I believe. And what happened to those, and why is everyone on TikTok so focused on aesthetics, and why do these aesthetics just disappear? So I'm going to break it down a little bit and first break down what an aesthetic slash core is versus what a subculture is. So an aesthetic or a TikTok core, whatever you want to call it, is mostly a social media trend based on aesthetics. So it's how someone is perceiving you, it's what your lifestyle looks like. It's all very trendy, and these don't last forever, which is kind of a problem. They do promote a lot of fast fashion and these little fads that will just come and go. So it's very social media based, and you'll see people doing these hauls. They'll be like cottagecore haul or cottagecore room tour or like e-girl get ready with me. But these don't last for very long. If you go on websites like Shein or Temu, they'll have like little categories of the current trend and styles, and then those will eventually just vanish over time because they're not popular anymore and no one's buying into that. If you just heard a meow, that was my cat Gojo. He is meowing at my bedroom door because our younger cat, Tabitha, just got spayed and they can't play with each other, so they're being separated for a few days, and he is not happy with this. So if you hear any meows, I'm so sorry for the meows. But yeah, the problem I have with these TikTok trends is that they are just promoting fast fashion, and all these companies are just gonna keep boosting out all these different trendy items that are just gonna get thrown away or donated at the end of the month because no one's buying into them anymore. People are putting on this false sense of like who they are, and they're not really getting to fully express themselves. And then when it comes to subcultures, the difference between those and cores or aesthetics is that subcultures are very political based. They have a stance, they have a meaning, they have a community. So like a lot of those subcultures, they bond over similar interests, like what their stance is on the environment, what their political stance is, and then they express that through their music and through concerts and community events and protests. So they're more like a closer community, and it's more personal because they actually go together. Like they're seeing each other face to face, they're doing all these community-based stuff, and it's more like real. Whereas on social media, it's all just like a 30-second video of what someone's aesthetic is, and like it's all just manufactured, and none of it is actually real, and they don't really have any like personal beliefs that they're trying to portray. Instead, they're just trying to show off their material items, and that's not really healthy. And the problem with that is that it can actually damage people that are still trying to figure out who they are. So like younger kids, like Gen Alpha as an example, they are only consuming social media content. So they're not getting the opportunity to explore outside of what they see on their For You page. They get to see like mob wife is trending, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna go buy all this stuff. And then the next week, they'll see something else is trending, like cottagecore is trending, and they're like, oh, I don't need any of this. I'm going to get rid of everything I own. They'll probably just throw it away because they're young. Maybe they'll donate it, but then that's just going to fill up thrift stores with a bunch of stuff that they can't use. And then thrift stores are going to have too much stuff that they're going to have to start throwing things away. And it's getting a really bad cycle of overconsumption. And then, again, they'll have their cottagecore aesthetic, and then clean girl's gonna be in, so now they're gonna get rid of everything they have and move on to the next trend. So they're not really getting to fully immerse themselves in these aesthetics and forming a sense of identity and trying to connect with stuff outside of just their appearance. And then that's another problem because, like, if it is the mostly like younger kids that are getting into these aesthetics, then that can actually damage their self-esteem because they'll see all these trends. Everyone's gonna have different body types, different bone structures, and they're gonna be like, well, I can't be a clean girl because my hair doesn't look this way, or because I have acne. And then that's just gonna bring them down, and then they're not gonna feel like they can belong somewhere. Whereas with subcultures, anyone was welcome if they felt like they could belong. That was like one of the main things with the post-punk thing. Like the post-punk subculture was people didn't want to stick to the current like political stuff that was happening, so they were doing protests and they were trying to like stick it to the man, I guess is what they say. And they would meet up with each other and they were very welcoming. Even like skaters, like skater people, like skater boys, I guess was like a subculture. And like skater guys are super chill and nice and they've always been welcoming to people. But with like these TikTok aesthetics and cultures, people don't really feel like they can belong. They don't have the opportunity to express what they're thinking and bond over common interests and find people that are actually interested in stuff that they like that can teach them more about what their personal beliefs are and help them form, like, I don't know what the right word is, but like just forming who they are and like what they believe in and what their music taste is. Because a lot of the subculture based music from like the gothic, punk, and hippie era, all those songs were to promote a general message about what these people believed in, and then they could talk about that. They could express their emotions and their frustrations out through their music, and it would be relatable to people going through similar circumstances. But you don't see that with aesthetics because it's all just manufactured of like, this is what my room looks like, this is what I look like. That's it. You're not really getting to know someone personally. You just know what they look like, and then you're going to start judging people based off of what they look like. And you'll be like, oh, well, I can't be friends with this person who's wearing cottage core because I'm an e-girl. And then it's just kind of like, okay, but that's just how you're dressing. That shouldn't really reflect who you are as a person. And they just don't really have those common places to actually have a proper like interaction with people and explore their identity from there. Now, there are some similarities when it comes to aesthetics and subcultures, which I feel like not a lot of people talk about because people are so focused on the aspect of like subcultures being political and actually having a message and a movement, and aesthetics just being culturated, like I was just saying. But they are kind of similar in a way. With both aesthetics and subcultures, you are still boxing yourself into this category, and then that does limit self-expression in some ways because people feel like they have to be a certain way. Like for punk, a lot of people like the music, but they're not going to identify as punk because they're not dressed in the same way and they don't have the same political beliefs. So in that sense, it's more so the punk aesthetic that they're interested in. Whereas if they're fully immersed in like the actual messages they're trying to promote and their political beliefs and the music, but maybe they don't dress that way, they're still considered punk because those are their personal beliefs, and subcultures are based off of beliefs and not necessarily appearance. But when people get too sucked into it and they're like, well, I can't be part of a subculture because I don't fit the aesthetic, then it turns into the aesthetic problem where people feel like they can't belong somewhere because they don't look a certain way. So both aesthetics and subcultures are kind of like that, whereas people can be gatekeepy when it comes to subcultures. Like back when emo kids were all the rage in like 2006, people were very judgmental and they're like, okay, well, this person doesn't shop at like, well, this person shops at Hot Topic, so they'll never be a true goth because they're an emo kid. But then it's also like, those were kids exploring their identity and who they wanted to be and what they were interested in. Most people, it was a phase and they grew out of it and didn't proceed like exploring any of those subcultures and anything connected to what emo was based off of. But other people, that was also their gateway into looking into subcultures and studying stuff related to their identity. They're like, oh, I like this kind of music. What is it about this music I like? Is it the message or is it the sound? And then they kind of start exploring from there. But now with aesthetics, I feel like people don't have the opportunity to fully deep dive into stuff they're interested in, and they're just going to keep moving on from one thing to the next. I guess when it comes to aesthetics, the main problem that I mentioned was definitely the overconsumerism and the fakeness that you see on social media, where people are just kind of buy-in and that's it. They're just gonna show off this like manufactured lifestyle that they're just gonna throw away and move on to the next thing for, and that's it. They don't care about where their money is going. They don't care about the working conditions of these fast fashion chains, because for a chain to make so many different aesthetics and sell all these items, they are promoting poor working conditions, they're affecting the environment, there's so much wastage, the staff aren't getting fair wages, and it's honestly horrible because the way social media is like marketing everything, social media was created to keep you on it. So they have to constantly pump out all these new trends and fads and stuff you need to buy. I mean, like, look at TikTok Shop in the US. I'm from Canada, so we don't have TikTok Shop, thankfully. But Instagram tried to do their own shopping thing as well, that way they could fit into this like constant trend of selling stuff to you and being like, this is popular, you need to buy this, and then it's no longer popular, go buy this. And then people just can keep buying these things because they want to fit in. They want a sense of belonging. But at the end of the day, it's not really belonging because they're not figuring out who they are. And that's the problem I have with aesthetics, is that it's limiting the youth from actually being able to express themselves and figure out their identity and what their interests are, because they're just so fixated on social media that they're not getting the opportunity to explore the real world and deep dive more into things to figure out like what is it they like. There's nothing wrong with trying out different styles. I used to be the exact same way when I was younger. I was like the consumer, okay? I was buying everything trendy and all this stuff because I was struggling with my identity. I was like, I don't know what I like. I'm supposed to like this. I guess I'm gonna like this. I guess I'm gonna dress like this. And then I would explore different fashion trends, which I don't do so much anymore because now I'm 23. I kind of know who I am. I figured out like what my interests are, what my beliefs are, like what my personal style is, and I stick to that. And I'm not set on just making everything cohesive and like aesthetic. Like, I love the idea of decorating my room to like the way that I like, but I'm not gonna only buy stuff that is labeled like dark academia as an example, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna buy this desk because it's called a dark academia desk. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna buy a desk because I like the desk and I don't need it to fit in a category. And then it's also like, you don't even need to buy stuff new. I'm really into thrifting more so nowadays, and I'm always buying stuff on Facebook Marketplace if I do need to replace something. And I'm not so worried about the labels, but it's also such an important part of growing up as a teenager and a preteen, is just exploring who you are and just kind of like, yeah, just self-exploration and figuring out what you like. But it's also important that we don't let people overconsume, and maybe there should be like easier ways for people to have access to these kinds of things while they're still trying to figure out the identities. But social media is literally too much, and it's feeding into people way too much, and I'm losing train of thought. In conclusion, because I just lost my train of thought, in conclusion, aesthetics aren't necessarily bad, but they're not really good. And the best way I could put it is like, we don't want to limit self-expression, and we don't want to put ourselves in a box, whether you feel like you belong to a certain aesthetic or if you feel like you belong to a certain subculture. It's important not to just label yourself and trap yourself into what the do's and don'ts are for these certain aesthetics and subcultures. It's important to figure out what you like, what are your beliefs, what are your interests, how do you want to reflect yourself, like how do you want people to perceive you in a realistic way, and not to just focus on what you look like on social media, and find more like community with people that have similar interests to you. So yeah, pretty much my conclusion is I hate that social media is pushing all these trends and aesthetics onto kids and people that are easily like influenced, because that is gonna hurt them long term and just gonna kind of make them feel stuck, and then it's gonna damage the environment and people's self-esteem, and it's just not a good time. But at the same time, I do like the idea that there are so many more aesthetics for people to explore and kind of like figure out where they belong. It's just important that people don't limit themselves to what they can actually be a part of. So, what are your thoughts on aesthetics? Do you think that aesthetics are a good thing? Do you think they're a bad thing? Do you wish that there were more subculture based things so people would have a sense of community? Or do you just not care? I'd like to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comments below, and check out my previous video I made. It will be somewhere on the screen here or linked in my description. That video was all about underconsumption and if underconsumption core was a good thing or a bad thing, and I will see you in my next video.